Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Mary. I am a first year middle school English teacher in Southern California, and today I'm going to be talking about my student teaching experience. I student taught last year during the spring, so I started in January 2020 and ended in June 2020. So I'm just going to be talking about my overall experience, my schedule, my relationship with my master teacher. Since I did student teach from that January to June period in 2020, I did experience teaching in person but also teaching online because we did move to distance learning in March, as most of you know. So yeah, this is gonna be a pretty long video, so let's just get started. So just some background on my degree and my credential, because some of you might be confused. I student taught in a kindergarten class, and like I said, I am a middle school English teacher. So my background is elementary education. My degree is in elementary education, but I have a supplementary authorization in English, so I can teach English in grades 9 and below. So that is why I am a middle school teacher, but I have a lot of experience in elementary. So I student taught full-time in a kindergarten class, and when you are student teaching full-time, that means like a full-time teacher, Monday through Friday. I was there when my master teacher got there, and I left whenever she left after school. A lot of the experiences I had are not going to be the same as the experiences that another person's had, obviously, and of course in California it's also kind of different with the way student teaching is set up, so just gonna add that in there really quick. And going into student teaching as well, I had to quit my job. I was a childcare assistant at a daycare, and I worked Monday through Friday, and the daycare was open from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. and this exact same time as student teaching would take place, because I would have to be at student teaching at around 7, and then I would leave around like 4ish. So didn't make sense for me to work. I tried to find a part-time job that was weekends only or like nights only, but it was really difficult. Eventually I just said, you know what, whatever, I'm just gonna student teach full-time and just focus on that. And I was lucky enough to have enough money like saved up for me to be able to not work that entire semester, so I was very lucky. For me, I had to take one class while I was student teaching, and that class was every Tuesday night. So it was only once a week, but it was exhausting having to go there after student teaching because it was from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock. And I hated going every week. It wasn't a terrible class, but you were just tired. Also with full-time student teaching, I know some people are part-time student teachers for one semester, and then they part-time student teach again the next semester, but in a different class. So the way my program is set up is that you are in the same class for one whole semester, and you are doing it full-time. So that's why I was there Monday through Friday, all day, and only for one semester. I do wish I had another semester. I feel like one semester wasn't enough, but it is what it is. Since we were staying in one class the whole time, what we had to do is we had to observe another grade level at the same school you were student teaching at. So I student taught in a kindergarten class, and I observed a 5th grade class, and that 5th grade class was in the same school I was student teaching in. So I had to observe about, I think, at least 30 hours in the other grade level. Now I'm just gonna talk about my overall like schedule Monday through Friday. So in a kindergarten class, you have the morning birds and the late birds. I don't know if this is like this everywhere, but in Southern California, this is usually how it is. And in this particular school district. So half of the class were considered morning birds. They were the ones who got to school right when school started in the morning at 8 a.m. And it was, again, about half the class. I had 24 students in total, which was a very small amount of kids, even for a kindergarten class. So I got really lucky with that. So 12 students, and then they were there from about 8 to like 10 something. I can't quite remember the exact time. And then we would have our first recess. And then during the first recess, the late birds, so the second half of the class, would join the rest of the class. Then we had all the students at once, and that was about for an hour and a half. And then after that hour and a half, then there would be lunchtime. So the late birds, that second group, would go to lunch, but then the early birds, the ones who were already here, would go home, because in kindergarten they don't stay the full day like other grade levels. The way the schedule would be broken down is that there would be, you know, like probably I would say like 3 different activities, like a reading, writing, and math, and then recess, and then the full group would be like, usually it was just like calendar time, morning meeting, the morning message, singing a song, counting how many days we've been in school, things like that. We would do that as a full group. And then when the late birds came back from lunch, so when the morning birds would be gone, the late birds would do exactly what the morning birds did. So we would be doing the same lessons twice in one day, which was pretty nice. So in terms of my actual day, the actual like schedule of my day, so my master teacher was one of the first people like at the school. Like, she was there before admin even got there. She would get there at almost 7. She would get there actually before 7 a.m. So my master teacher went on a walk every morning, so she would get to school at like 6 a.m. and then she would walk, and then she would actually be in the classroom at around 7 a.m. which is insane to me still. So she expected me to also be there around the same time. She told me 7:15 was still a good time for me to show up, so I would always show up between the 7 a.m. to 7:15 time period, obviously depending on traffic. Once I got there, I would ask her what I needed to get done. Sometimes I would know, like, if I knew we had to make copies of something, or we had to like prep for a specific lesson or activity. In kindergarten, there was a lot of cutting because not everybody knows how to use scissors just yet, so I had to do a lot of cutting. So she would usually let me know, or I would just ask her like, oh, do you need copies for something, or do I need to, you know, set something up? And yeah, we would just do that. And then at 8 a.m. is when the students would come in. When the students came in, I would usually just grab their homework folders and just like start going through everything. We had these like happy faces, where if students had 10 happy faces, they get 1 happy face a day if they stay on green. She used a behavior chart, so, or like behavior clip chart. So if everyone stayed on a happy face all day, they would get 1 happy face paper thing, and then they had to collect 10. If they collected 10, they would go to the prize box. The first week of student teaching, I was basically just observing my master teacher. You're really just trying to get into their routine of things and seeing what they do, and also just like learning their strategies and, you know, how they manage the classroom, how they prep, things like that. That's like the first week. So again, I was really just shadowing her. I was taking notes on everything she was doing. And then after that, I had to do a lesson once a week for my supervisor, because when you're a student teacher, you have your mentor teacher, but you also have your supervisor. And your supervisor is basically like the person who is from your university, and they will observe you once a week doing a lesson. I had to do that, and that started after my second week of student teaching. And the way that my supervisor set it up is that she would come in during a scheduled time. Like, we would write down what time would work for us. I had to do another lesson once a week for my master teacher to observe me, and it was separate from the one that my supervisor was observing. So I had to at least teach two lessons a week, and then slowly by like the 4th week, I would say, I started teaching more lessons. During these evaluations, my supervisor, again, she would come in during this time slot, and basically she would have a specific part of the room that she would sit in, and she would just watch me. It's definitely nerve-wracking. My master teacher had been teaching for 35 years, and she even told me herself that she still gets nervous when the principal comes in to observe her doing a lesson. So she just said it's something that you never really get over, which made me feel, I mean, made me feel better, but that's also like, dang, I'm still gonna have to get observed as I'm still like, even as a veteran teacher. So that kind of sucked. After the lessons, she would come talk to me, and we would step outside, and she would really just say like pros and cons about the lesson, and just tell me some of the notes that she had. And then obviously we just try to my best to implement the notes that she gave me into my next. So another thing, since the classes were split up in half, like we had the morning and then the afternoon kids, and since we were doing the same lessons in the morning and the afternoon, morning class was like our guinea pigs, because we would be teaching the same lessons again, and you're able to see what's, you know, what's going well, maybe something that a lot of the students are having trouble with. Something that my master teacher did a lot was she would teach in the morning, and then she would have me teach for the rest of the afternoon, because I was familiar with what the lesson plan was. So that was really great for me. So this is great for you if you end up student teaching kindergarten. I always aimed to do a evaluated lesson in the afternoon. So sometimes I would actually teach the lesson myself in the morning, and then I would see how it went, and then in the afternoon I would know what to fix. So pro tip for people who are student teaching in kindergarten. Since kindergarten got out earlier, we ended school around like 1:20. Usually I would be leaving the school at around 3:30 after basically doing the same thing I did in the morning. Prepping, making copies, and yeah, that was really just like my full day as a student teacher. Okay, so obviously I only got to teach in person for 2.5 months because in March we had to move to online learning because of COVID, of course. So initially in March, when we first got the news, we were told that we were gonna return in April. And it was really funny because in that time, my master teacher and I were like, okay, well, let's just get ready to be back in April. So we took down the March calendar, I put up the April calendar, we had a monthly song, took down the March song, put the April song up. We were ready to come back in April, which is just crazy thinking about it now. And then of course in April it was officially put out that we would not be returning to campus and that the students were going to move to distance learning. During that time, before we actually started virtually learning, student teachers were definitely like not of importance, of course, because teachers were just worried about what's going to happen with their students, how they're going to teach online and all those things. So it was definitely a weird time to be a student teacher because obviously we wanted to get our student teaching done, but you don't want to like overstep with the mentor teacher because they're stressed out about their own situation. So it was definitely difficult. The main thing really was just to let my mentor teacher know that I was here to support her and that, you know, whatever she needed, I would help her in any way that I could. And I know she really appreciated that. Eventually then we were able, once they kind of got into a flow of what was going to happen, then I was able to kind of start student teaching again. Another thing that was difficult, so obviously this is the first time we went into virtual learning, so things are a lot different now, of course. But back then, only meeting online twice a week and only for an hour because it was kindergarten, of course, so they didn't want the students to be online for too long. And then in all of those meetings, we would pretty much do usually something simple, like we'd read a story, we'd talk about the story. And during this time, I actually had to film my second TPA. So I'm sure you might have heard of a TPA before. In California, it's called the Cal TPA. In most states, it's called the Ed TPA, which is basically a video assessments that teachers have to do in order to get their credential. So I had done, there's 2 of these that you have to do, and I did one already and I filmed it in person and I passed. And then the second one I had to do it online because of virtual learning, of course, and I actually did not pass by about 3 points. And I'm still so upset about it because I honestly feel like if I was in person, I think I would have passed and it would have been just fine. But obviously I didn't really know what I was doing online, and most people didn't know what they're doing online, so it was kind of unfair in my opinion. But luckily I still have a few more years to redo it because the governor of California passed an executive order for student teachers to redo it, or some people didn't even get the chance to do it. So yeah, at least I still have some more time to do it. My master teacher had me make a weekly schedule since we weren't meeting with students every day, so I found a template by A Primary Kind of Life on Instagram, and she just did this nice schedule where it's broken down by subject. So I used that template, and then I would just find different online resources and of course Instagram and online sources that we could use for students to read and in their own time. So that was nice. Also for student teaching at my university, it was, or I don't know if it's just like a California thing, I don't know what it is, but we had to do a certain amount of hours for student teaching. I think it was like 300 or something. Of course with distance learning, they just kind of like canceled that, and just like, obviously because there's nothing really we could do. On top of that, some people actually lost their placement, like their master teacher just like said that they couldn't like work with them anymore because of everything that was going on, and it's totally understandable because it was a crazy time. Yeah, a lot of people, obviously if they lost their placement, there's not really anything that they can do about it, and nothing that the university could really do. So I think it was just the most fair thing to do was just to cancel all those hours. So originally I was supposed to be done in May because that's when my spring semester would usually end, but the school year for the students ended in June. At first I was planning on leaving in May. What was supposed to happen is the very last 2 weeks of student teaching, I was supposed to take over the entire class, like also in terms of planning for those whole 2 weeks. And I didn't get to experience that, which I also feel like messed me up when I finally started working because it was very overwhelming to just like start doing everything by myself. And yeah, it was really difficult. It was funny, I saw somebody talk about how they didn't realize how dependent they were on their master teacher until they actually started teaching, and it's so true. It was like, oh my gosh, I need her to help me and guide me. And you know, when you're just really on your own, it's really different. In terms of my experience just in general teaching online to kindergartners, again, I think because they only had us doing it twice a week, it was a little bit easier. We had the parents stay with the students every class meeting, or some sort of adult stay with them. Most parents were working from home during that time, so it was definitely easier to communicate. I know it's not really like that right now. Some parents are back working in offices and whatnot, but yeah, we were lucky to have all the parents at home still who were there to support us. I was able to communicate with the parents a lot. We communicated almost every day about like meetings or like homework, any questions that they had, and letting the parents know if they need to bring like supplies to the meetings, things like that. So it was a really good I had a really good relationship with the parents. Like the overall picture of what student teaching was like. Let me just go into some of the issues that I had really. So my master teacher, she was a really great master teacher, honestly, and I really did like having her as my mentor. The thing is that in the beginning, I felt like she was very like serious, and obviously some people that's just their personality, but it just made it harder to like talk to her, especially in the beginning when we didn't really know each other. Over time, I think we really did grow on each other. In the beginning, it was definitely a little bit tough. She was not very approachable. I was like intimidated by her. I was scared to ask her questions, and yeah, it was just definitely a little rough. I was the second student teacher that the students had that year. They had one student teacher the semester before, and I feel like there was a lot of comparison in the beginning to that previous student teacher, because she had a good relationship with that student teacher. So it was definitely kind of awkward. It kind of put me down as her student teacher, that I probably wasn't going to be as good as this other student teacher, because already going into it I was very nervous like most people, but I also felt like I didn't know if I was capable of doing this. Student teaching is the first time you're really like teaching in front of a class and doing all these things, and I just kept thinking like, what if I'm not good, and like what if this is just like really not for me? I don't know. But yeah, that competition with the other student teacher made it even worse. It made me more nervous, but it also kind of made me realize that I just need to work like 10 times as hard so that there wouldn't be that comparison between me and that other student teacher. And eventually I think it did go away, and I was able to like prove myself. I also had an issue with lesson planning in terms of like understanding how my master teacher lesson planned, but I feel like because she was so experienced and she like knew everything that she was going to do, it was really hard for like her to like let me inside her head. She would just kind of say like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this tomorrow, and I'd be like, oh okay, and I wouldn't really know how she went about like planning that. Like I think she was doing the same activities that she had been doing for the past like couple of years, so I don't know, I guess she just didn't really feel like the need to be like, oh yeah, I found this resource and I'm gonna use this, because she was pretty much using the same stuff. So that was kind of difficult. I also feel like in terms of her doing my observations, so like as I mentioned before, she had to observe me once a week, and I feel like she didn't give me a lot of feedback. And I know for some cases it was like, oh, because she genuinely liked my lesson and I did well, but I feel like the ones where I was struggling a little bit, that she didn't really give me more, I don't know, she just didn't really tell me exactly what went wrong or what I could have done to fix it. I don't know, maybe she was just trying to let me like self-evaluate and figure out what I needed to do differently. But obviously as a student teacher, it's like you don't fully know what you're doing, so you're really counting on like some guidance from your mentor and your supervisor, and I feel like I didn't really get enough of that. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Similar with my supervisor, I feel like I didn't get a lot of feedback from her, and if she did give me feedback, she was kind of being hypocritical, I hate to say it, but it was kind of like she would tell me to do one thing, and then I would do it, and then she would say I was doing something wrong. I don't know. And then I also feel like I was not prepared for the TPA at all. I did not understand what the TPA was until like my second week of student teaching, which is very disappointing because the earlier I filmed my TPA, the better it would have been for me, and I didn't fully understand that until I actually started doing it. So it was pretty disappointing to not get a lot of help in that, especially since it's such a big deal when trying to get your teaching credential. I actually didn't really like my supervisor, just in terms of like the comments that she would give me, because my master teacher and I, as our relationship grew a little bit, I would tell her like, oh yeah, this is what my supervisor said, and she would like completely disagree with what my supervisor said. So it was difficult in that case because it was like, oh, one person saying this and one person saying that, but that's kind of the purpose, I guess, of having a supervisor and a mentor, just to have those like multiple perspectives. Honestly, overall, I had a pretty good student teaching experience. I know a lot of people who did not. Yeah, I feel very lucky to have had the master teacher that I had, and we did have an overall good relationship, because again, like, she did end up asking me to stay until June, even though I was only supposed to stay until May. And yeah, we got along really well. We're actually supposed to get lunch together when the pandemic is over. I haven't really talked to her since I got this job, but she is retired now, so I don't want to like, I don't know, I want to let her live her life. That I have. So my first tip, and these are like things like going off of like things that I've learned and things that I kind of like regretted not doing. So first thing is being forward and confident, especially with asking questions. I feel like a lot of the time I was just so nervous that I would really just like step back and not do as much. I wish I like was more forward, especially during the times where I was still like, I was teaching a few lessons but not too many. Like, I was doing like 2 or 3 a week, but every now and then, I think as I mentioned, that my master teacher would do a lesson in the morning and then she would say, oh, do you want to do it in the afternoon since you already saw me teach it? And I'd say yes. But I feel like she always had to ask me, and I wish I kind of just stepped up and said, oh, is it okay if I teach the afternoon lesson? And I knew she would have said yes, but I think for me, I was also just worried about like overstepping her boundaries. Also, I was nervous at the same time, but at the end of the day, I wish I was more forward with it, and I wish I was teaching more lessons instead of like holding back a little bit, because the more experience the better, really. Especially with my case, I did mention like I wish student teaching was a little bit longer for me, but definitely something to keep in mind. Just, you know, before, but obviously again, don't, if you know that your master teacher is being kind of weird and you're gonna overstep your boundaries, then of course don't. But I feel like mine was cool enough to just be like, let me like hand over the reins for me and let me try. Another tip I found, being professional, like the way you carry yourself, because this is really like your 5-month job interview, as my boot camp coordinator person had explained it. Like, you want to make a good impression on everybody, like not just your master teacher but your principal, the other teachers at the school. Like, not to say like, oh yeah, you're gonna get hired right away after you student teach at that school, but still just making an overall good impression. I feel like because I had such a good relationship with my master teacher, like my letter of rec is honestly really great. Like, she was so detailed about the kind of person that I am and how I am as a teacher, so it was really nice to have a letter that was so detailed. And kind of just like to add on to that, just like learning to work with your master teacher, even if you don't really get along with them. I've heard a lot of people who've had stories about not getting along with their master teacher. I had one person in my cohort who had to move schools because she didn't like her master teacher, and like it was really serious. Like, she was crying at our meetings and everything, so she just like had to get out of there. So that happens. But I feel like in some cases, in her cases it was very severe, but like for other people, if you just don't like your master teacher, like because you just don't like their personality, it's honestly one of those things where you unfortunately have to like suck it up, because it wasn't really easy. Especially at my school, they explained how it wasn't really easy to just switch master teachers just because you don't like them. Like, you had to have a valid reason, and getting placements in general was already like a long, difficult process. That's how it was for me. I mean, like, I didn't really I hate to say that I didn't really like her, because now like we're cool, but in the beginning I was just like, ugh, like I don't know how I'm gonna work with this lady. And I kind of just learned to like read her personality, and I don't know, but yeah, everybody's gonna have a different experience in terms of your master teacher. Next tip, your TPA. I've said this before, but film as soon as you can, and also just learn about it as soon as you can. I feel like something that my credential program didn't do is not prepare me enough for my TPA. I didn't understand what it even was, so just understanding what it is, what's required, and just start working on it right away, because there's so many different sections. Definitely just looking it up now and just getting an idea of what it is and how to prepare for it, and just filming as much as you can. Get a bunch of footage so that you don't have to keep refilming. My next tip is definitely using your resources, your master teacher, but also the other teachers in the grade level, other student teachers, teacher Instagram, teachers pay teachers. I wasted so much time trying to be creative and like coming up with my own lesson ideas and trying to do something that nobody's ever done before, whatever it was. But there's so many great resources out there. It's like you might as well use them, and especially as a student teacher. And I honestly, I do have a teacher Instagram, follow me, Mary in Secondary, but I didn't really use it until like the end of my student teaching experience, and I wish I had used it earlier, because there are, again, so many great resources. So it's like, just take advantage of it. And last of all, like soaking in the experience. I feel like for student teaching, a lot of people realize like whether or not like this was the field that they should be in. I actually had one person in my cohort who quit and was in student teaching after like the first month, and the supervisor just said that he just couldn't do it anymore. And I didn't really know him, so I didn't really talk to him too much, so I don't really know what else he had to say about it, but I know he was struggling a lot. And yeah, so if this isn't the field for you, after you've experienced student teaching, move on to the next thing. I don't think you should feel bad about it, like, oh man, like this is something that I don't want to do anymore or I'm not interested in. You gotta do what makes you happy. But I also want to say that even if you had a bad student teaching experience, and like I said, I know plenty of people who had bad student teaching experiences, and that it's actually like, I don't want to say it's normal because I don't want you to have a bad student teaching experience, but people do have bad experiences, like, but still want to be teachers. So I would say, like, don't let this whole chapter of your teaching journey like define who you are as a teacher, especially at this time going in to student teaching, distance learning. Like, this is definitely not a reflection of the kind of teacher that you are and will be. I think I had my notes on this entire time. I don't think you can see it. These are all my notes for this video, so I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover. If I missed something and you still have a question about something in regards to student teaching, or even like just teaching now, please like leave a comment below, or you can DM me on Instagram, Mary in Secondary, and ask me there. So yeah, that is it. That was a very long video. I'm tired. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.